when you entered your plea for the marijuana conviction, you told the truth that time?
Yes.
So the only time you've not told the truth under oath was the injury to the child, correct?
That's correct.
Are your folks still alive?
Unfortunately not.
I'm sorry to hear that. So currently, other than your job, do you have any other sources of income?
No.
You talked a little bit about the issues you had with your fiance back in the Valentine's Day of 2012. Do you
Yes.
recall that? And you told us that she left with some IRAs.
I didn't really realize it at that moment, but yes.
How many IRAs did she take?
There was 2.
And you said they had at least $70,000 each in them?
Approximately.
And in addition, there was an $11,000 in a checking account?
Yes.
Did you ever make a claim with the police or hire a lawyer or make any other efforts to pursue that more than $150,000 you say that your ex-fiancée took?
No.
Why not?
Because it was my fault. I put her name on my account. I put the car in her name. Also, I didn't talk to her. I just didn't do it.
So it was the $150,000 in IRAs and bank accounts plus the Lexus automobile.
Yes.
And you may have been asked this today by some of the other lawyers, but I forgot, Mr. Gray, so I apologize for the repetition. Other than this lawsuit here today, have you ever been involved in a lawsuit, either as a witness or as a party?
No.
And in fact, at one point, you were a party to this lawsuit, correct?
I guess, yeah. I mean, not this. I guess it's this particular one. I was going to sue U-Haul.
You in fact did sue U-Haul and Lone Star. Is that correct?
I was at such a detached state with my lawyer that I really don't know what they got done, and I apologize for that. But I wasn't. They didn't communicate with me very much. I don't know what actually happened.
Whatever happened, even though at one point you were suing U-Haul and Lone Star, right now you're not making a claim against U-Haul or Lone Star.
That's
Is that correct? All right, let's go back to April 3rd and 4th, 2012, okay?
Yes.
You get that time frame there in your mind?
Yes.
All right. As I understand it, you drove the Lexus you drove to Lone Star. Whose car was that?
I purchased it from a used car lot right by my work.
So you own that car?
I was making payments on it.
The way that everybody understands somebody
Yes.
owning a car. I'm sure everyone in the jury or many people in the jury are making payments on a car.
Yes.
But no one else besides you had the right to drive that car, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So you drove your car to Lone Star.
Yes.
And it was just about 500 yards away.
Approximately.
And you rented the U-Haul truck in the way you talked about earlier today, correct?
Correct.
All right. After you did your initial walk-around inspection, you got in the truck.
Yes.
And you made a right turn out of the Lone Star parking lot. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you went down to the Valero station.
Yes.
Is that before or after the auto mechanic shop where you worked?
It's after the shop.
So you went past the shop.
Correct.
I think you testified earlier that sometimes when you were working at the body shop there, it was Alliance, is that the name of it?
It's not a body shop. It's an auto repair shop.
What's the name of it again?
Alliance Heritage Auto Repair.
When you were working at Alliance Heritage Auto Repair, your normal hours were from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m.?
Correct.
But sometimes you would stay late?
Yes.
Would other folks sometimes stay late there as well?
Yes.
So you got the truck, and immediately you felt there were some problems with the truck.
Yes.
You said earlier you didn't have a chance to do any inspections on the truck at that time.
That's correct.
Or in fact ever, correct?
Correct.
But you did drive right past the auto mechanic shop where you worked. Is that true?
That's correct.
And there was nothing in the world preventing you from, had you wanted to, pulling in there and doing an inspection of the truck to see what the problem might have been.
Protection form.
Basis.
Well, it calls for speculation.
You were driving the truck, correct?
Correct.
There was nothing preventing you from going into Alliance Heritage auto shop where you worked to inspect the truck, was there?
Actually, there are things to prevent that.
What was preventing you from doing that?
I had not asked permission to do it from the owner of the company.
Did you ask permission?
No, I did not.
So you made no efforts, took no steps, did nothing to try to inspect the truck, correct?
I'm not paid to inspect that truck, sir.
Sure, but you were driving it, right?
Yes.
And you'd agree with me that the driver of a vehicle has at least some responsibility for making sure that vehicle is safe, right?
That's a nebulous thing, but, would a woman have it, okay, then I don't know whether to say yes or no on that.
Well, you tell me what your answer is, Mr. Gray. Do you think a driver of a vehicle has a responsibility to make sure the vehicle is safe?
Every driver?
Every driver.
If it's true for every driver, then it had to be true for me. Then,
Do you believe it's true for every driver?
I believe that the owner of the vehicle is responsible for the safety of the vehicle.
I understand that. And what I'm asking you is a little bit different question, Mr. Gray. Do you believe that someone who's driving a vehicle has some responsibility to make sure that vehicle is safe?
I don't own the shop either.
Can you read my question back?
Yes.
Question, I understand that. What I'm asking you is a little bit different. Is a little bit different question, Mr. Gray. Do you believe that someone who's driving the vehicle has some responsibility to make sure that vehicle is safe?
Yes.
And you also agree that it would be irresponsible and wrong for someone to operate a vehicle that they believed was unsafe?
Yes.
You wouldn't want people out there driving cars, regardless of their background, their training, their experience, that they believed were not safe for them to be driving on the road, correct?
That's correct.
And so let me ask you, when you were driving that U-Haul truck on April 3rd and April 4th, did you believe it was safe?
Yes.
You thought it was okay to operate that vehicle on the road?
Yes, because the owner of the vehicle told me it was.
Separate and apart from what you were told, you wouldn't have been driving that vehicle if you didn't think it was safe, correct?
I was driving the vehicle because he told me it was safe.
Well, and you're not just the average driver, are you? You're somebody with 30-plus years of auto mechanic and repair specialization, right?
That's correct.
In fact, you said you had expertise in steering and front-end issues, right?
That's right. And I could have fixed whatever was broken on it.
But you thought it was safe enough for you to drive on the highways of Texas to operate that vehicle, correct?
I was told that it was, sir.
And you took responsibility for that vehicle when you took the keys and got behind the wheel, didn't you?
I couldn't take responsibility for it. It's not my truck, sir. I only rented the truck.
But no one was obligating you to drive that truck, was there?
I needed to rent a truck, sir.
You're saying that your needs to get out of the apartment were a higher priority than the safety of other people on the highways of the state of Texas?
I wasn't making that. I wasn't making that statement, sir. The owner of the truck made that statement.
What I'm asking you is, you were driving the truck, right?
Yes.
And you knew about the truck, whatever you knew about it, correct?
I only could speculate about it. I didn't check it.
But you knew how it drove, right?
Yes.
And you were able to form some impressions about how that truck was operating, correct?
Yes.
And based on all those impressions, you alone made the decision to drive that truck on April 3rd and April 4th, correct?
I made that decision after the owner said that it would be safe.
After whatever you were told, whatever you knew, ultimately, you made the decision to drive the truck on April 3rd, correct?
I decided to drive it.
And after driving that truck from Lone Star to the Valero and back to the Lone Star, from the Lone Star to your house, from your house to Joe's house, from Joe's house back to your house, the next day you made the decision to drive that truck again, correct?
Yes.
You made the determination that it was safe to drive that, correct?
I didn't redetermine it, sir. I decided that when I took the guy's word for it the day before.
At that point, on the morning of April 4th, you already loaded all your stuff up into the truck.
That's correct.
You could have taken that truck a half a mile away and parked it somewhere, couldn't you?
Yes.
There was no obligation or condition or anything in the world that required you that morning to drive that truck back to your place of work, was there?
I had to get to work. That's the only vehicle I had.
Could you have called a cab?
I couldn't afford a cab.
Could you have called a cab?
Rather than the truck, they couldn't haul my stuff.
Your stuff was in the truck, right?
I couldn't afford a cab and the truck rental.
I understand. The morning of April 4th when you woke up, the truck was loaded.
Yes.
You could have left your apartment, locked the door, and none of your stuff would have been in the apartment, correct?
Correct.
At that point, had you wanted to, you could have gotten one of your buddies from work to come pick you up and take you to work, couldn't you?
Second form.
To what end, sir?
Could you have gotten someone to give you a ride to work?
Just leave my stuff in the truck
I'm sorry,
forever?
no, I'm sorry.
You could have called one of your buddies to come collect you and take you to work the morning of April 4th, couldn't you?
Second form.
I don't know if any of my buddies could, no.
Did you try to call any of them?
No.
And you had some friends there at your job at Alliance, didn't you?
I had coworkers.
Well, you had coworkers that were close enough that they were going to let you stay with them, right?
Correct.
Coworkers that were close enough that were going to take you to help you unload all your stuff at their home.
Correct.
And are you telling this story that you don't know whether those coworkers would come collect you and take you to work?
Let's see, I went and made a left turn, and then a left turn,
And then a right turn.
and then back to the right, yeah.
Okay. And then you went straight back to your apartment?
That's correct.
And then you and Joe loaded up your stuff?
Yes.
When you rented the truck from U-Haul, did you get any paperwork from them aside from the contract? Or
Not
do you
that I
recall?
recall, aside from the contract, no.
All right. Ultimately, when you did rent the truck from U-Haul, you got safe move coverage. Is that correct?
That is correct. I did have I had a package that described safe move coverage.
And when you got the safe move, that was to insure the stuff that was being loaded in the truck, as you understood it.
Yes, and I typically just took the coverage. You know, it didn't
Sure.
cost much, so I don't think that went over. I just have always been told just take it.
As part of the process you went through after the accident, did you create an inventory of everything that you loaded into the truck?
I did.
Let me hand you what we'll mark as exhibit number 2 to your deposition.
Yes.
Is that your signature on each page of exhibit 2?
Yes.
And is this a accurate inventory of everything you loaded into the truck on April 3rd of 2012?
Sounds about right.
When you were loading the truck, did you have a plan on how to load it? How did you determine where to put what into the truck?
Well, that's just one of those things that we try to centralize it to where it's not all to one side and it's not all in the back. And want as little shifting of movement as possible.
All right, now this is going to be an art project for you. And I know you're not an artist, but I'm going to give you a piece of paper with
Actually, I am an artist.
Oh, even better. You might want to wait till I have to see what I'm asking you to do before you
But
claim that.
I just,
But I'd like you to, what I've done there is drawn a box, and in my semi-legible handwriting written front at the top. Do you see that
okay.
there?
Yes, sir.
Can we agree that box would represent the inside of the truck?
Okay.
And can you draw in there for us where you loaded the pool table that we've heard about here today?
Keep in mind, this won't be artwork. It's only going to be a crude graphic representation.
That'll be fine for our purposes.
All right. And it'll be as best my memory
Absolutely.
has. But if I remember correctly, there was also something like fender wells that caused a little bit of an irregular shape. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think there was some fender wells like around there.
You're right, and you described that there's I think what's called the mom's attic at the front where there's a little
That's
bit of a
right
lever
there.
there.
The pool table was like, I had the Tempur-Pedic mattress about there.
Can you write mattress on there so we'll just know what
Sure.
that is?
This is crude graphic representation of the fine pool table. There were boxes.
And the X's are boxes.
Yes.
Can you just write up top next to where I have front X equals box? And you recall about what size boxes you're talking about there?
They were the, not the smallest box U-Haul offered, but the next step up.
Okay.
Approximately 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet.
Gotcha. All right.
We had some bed framing over here. It's kind of hard to remember back when you're actually trying to draw it. But I believe that I actually had my grill here. And we had a patio table. I'd be guessing on the rest of it, dude. This part over here was the heaviest and required the most restraint.
Mm-hmm.
The other stuff was irregularly shaped things like tables. I did take our dining room table apart, so it's vertically in here somewhere. I had bags of bedding jammed in between articles to try to keep it from moving. But as far as the layout of the rest of it, it'd be total guess. I remember putting thought into this part of it, but and the thought in mind was to keep the pool table as close to the center line as possible. So we put stuff in between to keep it there.
To make sure I understand, Mr. Gray, you recall what you've drawn in exhibit number 3 as being there. That's the grill, the pool table, the mattress, and some boxes on the right side of the truck. The rest of the stuff was arranged on the left side, but you don't recall how it was arranged
I had boxes of dishes, I know, over on this side.
Can you mark where those
Sure.
boxes of dishes were? And were those in the same size boxes as we saw on the right side?
Yes.
Okay.
There was all kind of kitchenware, but and I believe the electronics were on this side. It's just been a while.
Sure. So on the other side, across from the pool table and the mattress were your electronics. Were those in a box?
Correct. And I had the superstructure that goes under the pool table. It's like two massive legs that have two adjustable feet on them, and we loaded that over on this side. I know, I can't remember if they're all the way up front, but yes, that's what it was. Because we had them turned to brace from across here.
So those would be the pool table legs?
Yeah, and it had the little feet on that side. And honestly, the rest of it was stacking it where it would fit.
Sure. So exhibit number 3 is your best recollection of how the U-Haul truck was loaded.
My best recollection.
And the pool table, although it was heavy, it was something that you and Joe were able to lift up and load into the truck yourselves?
We had furniture dollies on it, 4 of them, and we strapped it to the dollies and rolled it up the ramp.
Where did you get the dollies you used to help load the truck?
I bought them.
Let me hand you a little mark as exhibit number 4 to your deposition.
Nice table.
Dr. Ray, real quick comment. Mr. Adams, is it okay if I place a sticker here, or would you like it on the back?
You can put it on there, it's fine. Is that a picture of the pool table we've been... No.
It highly resembles my pool table.
Hang on one second. We'll let the court reporter actually write this down. Is that a picture on exhibit number 4 of the pool table we've been talking about today?
Yes.
And I'm going to add these 3 photos also to exhibit number 4. Is that some of the other furniture that was loaded onto the truck on April 3rd, 2012?
Yes.
And I know that's not everything that's on the inventory you prepared, but that's some of the equipment and
That's
possessions that are loaded on the truck.
Yes.
All right. So after you load the truck, Joe goes home.
Yes.
You go to bed.
Yes.
Next morning you wake up and you said you don't recall what time you left to go to work.
Not exactly, but typically left by 6:15.
You need to be at work by 7.
That's what I always hoped for.
And if you didn't, your boss was going to give you a lecture.
Yes.
Did you go back the opposite way we described? I don't want to go through the turns if you went that same way, but did you go the same way to return to your job?
I just about always went 35 to Golden Triangle going to work because
Right.
it just seemed to work the best.
And when you were leaving your apartment that morning in the U-Haul truck, fully loaded, did you notice any difference in how the truck drove with the load in it than it had the night before when the truck was empty?
It seemed just a little bit worse, yeah.
When you say a little bit worse, what do you mean?
Well, in addition to the pulling to the left, it's felt a bit shifty.
When you say pulling to the left, did it pull to the left the same, less, or more than it had when it was empty on the morning of April 4th?
The same or more.
Let me finish.
Sorry.
During the entire time that you'd had the U-Haul truck, had you been drinking any Starbucks cans of soda or coffee while in the truck?
No, but it's possible Joe did.
Do you recall if Joe did?
Not for sure, no.
All right, so you drive 820 to 35 to Golden Triangle on
Yes.
April 4th, right?
Yes.
And during that time, although there's some pulling to the left, you're able to maintain your lane of travel.
Yes.
Now, as I recall, inside the truck, there's a sticker with a 1-800 number on there. Do you recall that being there?
There was what, sir?
A sticker with a 1-800 number. Do you recall that?
I vaguely recall it, you know.
And that number is to call if there's a problem with the truck, right?
Okay.
Do you recall if the sticker there is what it says?
I really didn't look at it.
Whatever the stickers were there or not there, you never called the 1-800 number to say, hey, there's a problem with this truck.
Objection form.
Basis.
You're assuming facts that are not in evidence. He hasn't said that there is a 1-800 number for him to call.
You never called any 1-800 number to say there's a problem with this truck.
No.
And do you know whether U-Haul provides roadside service if there's a problem with the vehicle?
They say that there is roadside service, yes.
So you knew that there was roadside service available if you were driving a U-Haul vehicle and experienced a problem, correct?
That's correct.
And that's something you probably had with your Lexus, right?
The Lexus I bought new from from individuals. So.
But Lexus had roadside service. You could call them up if there was a problem. You're familiar with that concept.
I didn't buy her car new. It was just almost new.
Yeah, sure.
But no, there wasn't any warranty coverage with it.
But you knew that U-Haul had a service that if you had a problem with one of their vehicles, you could call a 1-800 number, correct?
Yes.
And you understand that U-Haul would then come out there and repair that vehicle for you or make arrangements for you, correct?
Yes.
But
That's
on
what I was
April
told.
3rd, you never called that 1-800 number, did you?
No.
Notwithstanding the fact that you've told us here today that you felt the truck was pulling to the left, correct?
That's correct.
On April 4th, when you said the truck was pulling to the left, you didn't call the 1-800 number, did you?
No.
And you don't know then, as we see here today, whether U-Haul could have provided you with an identical size truck to meet your needs, do you?
After I'd already rented that one?
After you'd rented that one.
No, I didn't know because I didn't call.
And you don't know if this accident could have been prevented, given what you say, had you called U-Haul and gotten the identical truck, loaded it up there on the side of the road, and gone on to work, do you?
I do know that if the steering hadn't failed, there wouldn't have been an accident.
Sure. But you know there's other things you could have done, Raymond Gray, to prevent this accident, right?
I did everything I could, sir.
You didn't call the 1-800 number roadside assistance number, did you?
Objection form.
No, I didn't.
You didn't pull over and ask one of your friends to take you to work, did you?
No.
What you did was you drove a truck that you, based on your years as a mechanic, with front-end specialization, thought was unsafe, right?
Objection form.
I drove a truck that I was told would be safe by the owner of the truck.
And during that time, you took no steps to
I'm not sure how far it is. I'd guess 20 to 30 miles.
20 to 30 miles. Okay, so you've driven from Lone Star to your house, that's 30 miles. From your house to Joe's house, say 25 miles, is that fair?
Yes.
From Joe's house back to your apartment, another 25 miles, right?
Yes.
So when you woke up on the morning of April 4th, you'd driven that U-Haul trailer about 80 miles, correct?
That's about right, yeah.
At the time of the accident, you'd driven it about 110 miles. Is that also correct?
That's what the math says, yes, sir.
Now, when you got on Golden Triangle and you were heading toward where the accident ultimately happened, how fast were you going?
The speed limit's 35 there, and I always obey the speed limit, so it was 35 or less.
And you said that you were making a right turn when the
Slight curve.
or you were negotiating the curve. Is that a fair way to describe it?
That's fair.
So you're negotiating the right curve when you hear the snap, is that right?
Yes.
How far into the turn were you when you heard the snap?
Well, it wasn't exactly a turn. I mean, it was more like a curve. And I'm going to say that I was probably a third of the way into it.
So you were already turning the wheel to the right to negotiate that curve. And you were about a third of the way through the curve when you heard the snap.
Yeah, approximately.
Is that right?
It's approximately right. I didn't measure it, but
I understand.
I'm guessing, yeah.
You're about a third of the way through the turn. Is that fair?
I think that's a fair assessment.
All right, so let me start that again. You're on Golden Triangle, heading east, going about 35 miles an hour, right?
Approximately.
You're negotiating the right-hand curve, and you're about a third of the way through that curve when you hear the snap.
Yes.
So you had already started turning the wheel, and the vehicle was turning to the right.
Correct.
As a front-end mechanic, you understand then that the wheels then were turning to the right for the vehicle to be going to the right. Is that fair?
That's true.
All right. Then you said you heard a snap,
Correct.
and then the steering wheel started to turn freely.
Yes.
And it was going counterclockwise?
Clockwise.
Clockwise. But the steering wheel was turning, and there was no response to the tires?
Okay, let me just break it down the way it happened again, and that way it'll be clear. When the snap happened, that's not the moment I noticed the steering wheel spinning. What happened at that point is the snap was indicating loss of control of the vehicle. It would no longer control the vehicle. That was it breaking free from the control system. The vehicle then immediately went into the left-hand lane because of the pull to the left. This all happened so fast that, when I noted the steering wheel spinning was when the vehicle was at a stop.
Gotcha. All right, let me break it down to make sure I understand, Mr. Gray. Thank you for that. When you're driving on Golden Triangle and you're about a third of the way of negotiating through that right-hand curve, where are your hands on the wheel?
Like this.
So they're at 10 and 2, but
Maybe a little farther down because we're just starting into the turn.
All right, so you're gesturing on the camera. Can you show the camera where your hands are?
Like that.
All right. You hear the snap. What happens to the steering wheel at that point?
It just slings downward because there's no resistance on it anymore.
Continues going clockwise, the way you were driving.
Correct.
All right. And then what happens next? What's the next thing you recognize happening?
The next thing I remember was the huge crash and, shaking the dust off myself and looking, and the steering wheel was winding to a stop.
So after the accident happens, do you recall what happened to your body during the accident?
I really don't know what happened. I noticed, the airbag had gone off, which I don't really, recall seeing it. I guess that just happened so fast. But no, I was kind of off to the side like that, and spotted the steering wheel turning, and then I just saw that smoke like the powder from the airbag, and it scared me that the truck was on fire. So I tried to get out as fast as I could.
Sure. So after you first came to your senses after the impact, you saw the steering wheel was turning.
Yes.
And it was turning the same way it had been turning before the impact.
Yes, it was like it was spinning.
Clockwise?
I believe so, yeah.
Do you recall how many revolutions it made?
No. It could have been just like turned once and stopped, but, I remember just seeing the truck's not moving, but the steering wheel's turning, and free of any resistance.
You see the smoke,
Yes.
right? And you decide you want to get out of the truck.
Yes.
Did you have to move the airbag out of the way and climb out of the window?
You know, I think I just kind of didn't, at the moment, the airbag thing wasn't registering to me because I was just seeing smoke. And then when I got out, I noticed, oh, there's an airbag, and that was probably, what I was seeing. But
Let me hand you what we'll mark as exhibit number, what number are we on, Tony? Exhibit number 5 to your deposition. Does that represent, you ready? All right, Mr. Gray, I'm handing you what we've marked as exhibit number 5 to your deposition. Do you see that there?
yes,
Does that represent how the vehicles looked after the accident on April 4th, 2012?
yes, it does.
And that's the U-Haul truck that you were driving?
Yes,
And that's the vehicle that you now understand that was being driven by Ms. Davis?
yes.
Let me hand you what we'll mark as exhibit number 6 to your deposition. And that's another. Do you have exhibit number 6 to your deposition?
I'm sorry.
Do you have exhibit number 6 to your deposition, Mr. Gray?
Yes,
And that's another example of, or another image of the vehicles that were involved in the accident on April 4th, 2012.
correct.
And again, that's the U-Haul truck that you were driving.
Yes,
And you can see the blue car is that the vehicle now was driven by Mrs. Gray.
Miss Davis.
Miss Davis, I'm sorry. Let me try that again. The blue car you see on Exhibit 6, is that the vehicle you now know was driven by Mrs. Davis?
Yes,
And in Exhibit number 6, the door to the truck is open, is that right?
yes.
You didn't open the door, though, did you?
No, Carl Moss opened the door.
All right. Other than the door being open, does that image accurately reflect how the truck and Miss Davis's car looked after the accident on April 4th, 2012?
Yes,
You know who took those pictures?
me,
All right. So when did you take those pictures?
immediately after the accident,
And how did you take them?
with my phone.
You use your phone for the camera feature on your phone?
Correct.
All right. So after the accident, you got out of the truck, right?
I got out of the truck, yes.
You climbed out of the window, in fact.
Yes.
When did you take the pictures?
After I called my boss, I'm sure.
Okay. Why did you take the pictures?
Well, because it was a scary event, and I just felt like I wanted to take the pictures.
Did you take any other pictures besides those two?
No.
During the time, going back to the accident event itself, when you heard the snap, did you see or feel anything fall out of the steering column of the truck?
No.
Did any bearings or parts fall out of the steering column that you recall?
There again, things happened pretty fast
Sure.
after that crack, but I didn't hear any secondary impact or anything, like no parts falling off.
And after the accident, sometime later, you had a chance to retrieve some of your belongings from the truck, correct?
Correct.
And you had some belongings in the front cab part of the truck. Is that also correct?
Correct.
When you went to retrieve the belongings from the cab part of the truck after the accident, did you notice any parts or pieces of the steering column or gearbox on the floor of the truck cabin?
No, I didn't.
After the accident, you said you spoke to someone who gave you a card, a U-Haul card.
Yes.
We're at a point where you take a break. You want to take a break for a second?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. After the accident, you said you spoke to someone who gave you a U-Haul card, correct?
That's correct.
Do you recall who that was?
I might know the name if I heard it, but I can't remember it right now. He was tall and slender build, and He had some kind of a higher title. I don't really remember what it was, but
And after you spoke to him, what did you do next?
well, the whole accident scene was still being processed, and I guess at the point when my coworker showed up to pick me up, I left and went to work. But don't remember whether he talked to me before or after the policeman talked to me. I really don't remember.
Sometime that morning, you gave a statement to the policeman.
Yes, I did give a statement to the police.
You also talked to this fellow from U-Haul.
Correct.
Did you go to Lone Star before or after you went to work?
Like to report the wreck? I mean,
For any reason at all?
well, I didn't go to the Lone Star office that morning at all. I passed right by it, or right about there was where the wreck was.
So sometime the next day is when you first went to the Lone Star office after the accident on April 4th, 2012?
Objection
Two.
form.
Basis?
I really don't remember when I went back by Lone Star.
It's a misstatement of his testimony.
You don't recall when you went back to Lone Star, but you are certain it was not the day of the accident, April 4th, 2012, correct?
No, I'm not certain that I didn't go by there at some point. But on that day, the first place I went to work was to work, And then I stayed for a while, and my boss didn't feel comfortable with me staying, so he told me to go home and get some rest. Well, I still had to go take care of where were my property and see what I was going to do with it.
And how would you have gotten to your property?
Well, the truck had been hauled to that main yard by then, and I just went there. For all I could do that day was grab a few things out of the cab.
How did you get to the main yard as you described it?
I drove my car.
Where was your car?
Okay, it was at Lone Star.
So
But
you-
I just went and got my car. I didn't go in and talk to anyone. I don't think at that time. I'm not sure, though.
So your best recollection as we sit here today is on April 4th, you did not go inside Lone Star.
I can't remember. I really can't.
You don't know one way or the other.
Not if I went in that day or not, no. I
Some-
was a little flustered that day.
Sure. At some point, did you call into U-Haul to make a claim for property damage after the accident?
Yes.
Did you understand that that call was recorded?
Well, I figured I probably wasn't worried about it. A lot of calls are recorded. I was making an honest claim, so I probably didn't give it a second thought.
Let me know if you can hear this, Mr. Gray, okay?
Okay.
Let me see if I can turn that up.
Mr. Adams, for purposes of the record, can you tell us what we're about to listen to?
Sure. Mr. Gray, you made a call to the U-Haul hotline after the accident, correct?
Yes, I did.
And in that claim, you had some discussions with U-Haul personnel regarding your property damage in the accident itself, correct?
Okay.
Does that sound familiar to you?
I mean, if I didn't, I should have.
Okay.
You ever been in a wreck?
What city and state are you currently in?
All right. Listen to this and tell me if this is your voice, Mr. Gray, okay?
What? What city and state are you currently in? Fort Worth. Fort Worth.
Is that you, Mr. Gray?
I guess.
All right.
Wasn't a
I'm
very
sorry.
big sampling.
I'm sorry. What are we listening to?
Don't worry about it. I'll clarify it.
No, I need to know what we're listening
It's
to.
his
That's-
audio recording from the call he made to U-Haul.
Okay.
All right.
All right. It's just, it's hard to tell who that is, so I'm
Sure.
trying to figure out what we're listening to.
Objection to the sergeant.
Thanks, Jerry.
And what's
It was in Fort Worth. It was still in Fort Worth.
what's a good callback number for you?
817-353-0140. That's out.
That was your cell phone number in April of 2012,
And
correct?
it was me then.
So that is you?
Yeah.
And this is a recording of a statement you made to U-Haul, correct?
I reckon so.
All right, let's listen to a little bit of it.
And whereabouts did the accident take place? Like main crossroads spot?
It happened on Golden Triangle, right close to where I got the truck.
Uh-huh.
I had exited the freeway off of 35 going north, and I proceeded east on Golden Triangle. And
So that's you describing the accident similar to what you described to us here today,
I
correct?
reckon so.
And there's no doubt that that's you on that tape, correct?
It sounds like me.
You're describing the events in an accident that you had, correct?
Yes. I
Now-
really don't remember making the phone call, but that's me.
The phone call was made in April of 2012, right?
The wreck was in April 2012.
And you made the phone call shortly after to make your property claim, is that right?
Like I said, I don't really remember making that phone call, but that's my voice, so.
And that was certainly much closer in time to the accident than we're here in July of 2013, correct?
What was that?
Sure. When you made that call to the U-Haul hotline, whenever it was certainly more close in time to the accident than we are here today, right?
Okay, I thought you were telling me I made that call that day of the accident.
No, sir.
Okay.
But you did make it closer in time to the accident than when we're here today, right?
Okay, yes.
All right. And when you gave that call to U-Haul, you were trying to be as accurate and truthful as possible in describing the events you were talking to them about, correct?
I would think so, yeah.
You're trying to describe all the pertinent events about whatever you're talking to them about, right?
Objection form.
Is that correct?
Well, I don't remember the exact conversation, so until I hear it, I won't be able to tell you.
Is it your normal practice not to tell all the important events when you're telling a story to somebody?
Objection form.
You can answer.
No, it's not normal practice, sir, but, until I hear what you're talking about, I don't really remember it.
Sure. Whatever it was, you have every expectation that you weren't lying to the folks at U-Haul when you made the call, were you?
I wouldn't have intentionally lied about anything, no.
You'd have been trying to be accurate with them, right?
Correct.
All right.
so I went around a curve to the right. The steering was giving me problems all the way the whole trip, and I told the lady when I picked the truck up that I drove it a little ways, I brought it back, and I told her that something was funny about it. It wanted to pull to the left really hard, and it was the only truck they had, and I had an eviction notice. I had to get out of my apartment, but I took it. But it was hard to drive, and he kept wanting to go left. But when I was negotiating this right-hand curve, suddenly it felt like something just let go on the front end, and it went to the left, and I hit an SUV head-on.
So you told the folks at U-Haul about the accident, correct?
Yes.
And what you told them about how the accident took place was very similar to what you said here today, right?
It sounded like it.
Now, when you're talking to U-Haul about when you went back to Lone Star and took the truck back, at least according to what we just heard, you didn't mention any man you talked to, did you?
It didn't sound like it.
And in the recording statement you gave closer in time to when it happened, the only person you mentioned speaking to about the truck at Lone Star was a girl, correct?
Okay.
Well, you tell me that's what we just heard, right?
Right.
All right. So, at least one time when you told this story, a time much closer to the events that when it took place, you didn't mention talking to any man at Lone Star, correct?
It didn't sound like I did. I mean, was that the whole conversation right there?
It was everything about that. Well, do you recall telling anyone about a man when you spoke to U-Haul?
Well, anytime I've told the event, if, I was telling the whole event, then the man was involved because the man was involved.
Well,
He's the one that told me the truck was all right.
we know for a fact from what we just heard, at least one time when you told about the events, you didn't mention a man, correct?
Was that the entire conversation?
It was.
Okay. Well,
So at least one time when you told about the events, you didn't mention a man, correct?
I'm sorry I failed to mention the man on that occasion. And
All right.
he wasn't any less involved. That was just...
I understand your story here today, Mr. We talked about the fact that before the accident, you never inspected or examined the truck that you were driving, correct?
Other than the initial walk around.
You never looked at any part of the steering or any components of the steering system before the accident, correct?
No.
My statement was correct.
Your statement is correct.
And after the accident, I take it you've never done any inspection or examination of the steering components or suspension of the truck. Is that also correct?